Hi, Martyn Ware. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on last week, where we talked about pretty much how depressed we were about the state of the nation and the state of the world. But
Yeah.
this week, we're going to attempt to try and put things right a bit with your manifesto for change, which is
Yeah.
a wonderful idea, and I think more people should do this. So
Well,
it might
I
focus their
think,
minds.
yeah, I
Sorry.
think I actually did this for another discussion that I had online with someone else, can't remember, a while ago, and I did it for a bit of fun originally, and I thought, do you know what? It's really quite an interesting, thought game because we're so used to being told by politicians that you can and can't do stuff subject to budgetary restrictions, which largely is a load of old bollocks, as
Absolutely.
we all know, because we're a fiat currency and we can, there are consequences to just printing money ad infinitum. But in the short and medium term, you can just pay for it, issue
Absolutely.
bonds, whatever. So, for instance, if we, for whatever reason, the government decided that it was imperative that there was a massive program of public works needed, like, 1 million council houses, they can do it because they just issue some bonds, people buy it, blah, blah, blah. So I think there's at the very core of a lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about now is not just a kind of conceptual idea. It's this idea that, oh, it's all very well him saying that because he's not done the budget. Well, there are certain things we can cut back on as well.
Yes.
Lots and lots of wastage, as we know, and most of it is corruption based. So let's start, shall we?
Yes,
Um,
please.
First of all, I don't believe anything in this country from a democratic point of view is going to change until we get proportional representation. So that will be probably, if not near in the top three of the things that I would stand on if I had my own party. Oh, by the way, the party is called the Compassion Party,
Brilliant.
right?
Yeah.
Um, Up there as well is we need a written constitution. So the very notion that we work on some kind of honor system politically. In other words, oh, we don't need to write it down because, there's no point because, we're all the right honorable. We're honorable people has been utterly discredited on almost every party now. So there needs to be checks and balances. There needs to be legal recourse if people are corrupt, who are purportedly in charge, particularly in the government. And at the moment, there isn't. It's like a moving scenario. If any party in power wants to increase the number of lords, for instance, they just do it. We can have 1,000, 2,000. It doesn't matter. So that to me and that's used as bribery, as we all know, for people. So that's got to change. So I think there should be a written constitution. Now that, and with legal recourse if it gets transgressed. And more to the point, the legal recourse should involve real penalties, both financial and custodial. So this leads me on to another point, which is, can you remember the last time a politician in this country got prosecuted for anything associated with their actions in Parliament? I can't. Can you?
No.
And another notion as well is the idea that you can say anything you want under parliamentary privilege, lie through completely lie, and particularly now that it's all on TV. Once you take the shame out of it, they don't care. If you assume that they don't care whether they get found out or not, they can use BBC Parliament and their friendly media as pure propaganda now. So the goalposts have moved significantly. Feel free to stop me at any point. I'm just going to keep rambling on until you.
If it's all right, I'll let you go through it, and then we can go back over it.
All right. Okay. Cool. We need to get rid of the royal family. They're an anachronism. It's fine if they want to have something like, the royal family of Denmark or Holland or whatever, where it's a cipher. That's fine. I personally would get rid of them completely and say you've got to pay your own way. Get rid of the civil list. Thanks very much for all the fish. Now fuck off. But that's just me. So, we need a huge social housing building revolution. We need a huge amount of. There's a huge deficit of social housing compared to when I was growing up. Certainly, I would not be here today were it not for socialist policies post-war. We lived in council houses all our lives until I moved down to London. Just to address the issue of how you're going to pay for all this stuff, super tax on the rich, windfall taxes, and ignore all that bollocks about, well, we'll just leave the country. Well, see you, and don't bang your head on the way out. Thank you. Because we're not deriving any taxational benefit from most of them anyway. Particularly massive multinational corporations, Amazon, etc., don't pay an appropriate amount of tax. So I would make it a part of the laws of the land that they have to pay tax on everything that is sold within the territory. So they can't go, well, we're based in fucking Belize or something. No. If it's sold here, you have to pay tax. That adds to that you need to pay tax here. Don't care where you're based. Never mind these cozy little arrangements that you have with the Inland Revenue. And that would raise a huge amount of money. We'd lose some money from the occasional billionaire who does pay some nominal tax, but fuck them. We don't need it. Pay MPs properly. Pay them more, but ban second jobs. And no paid lobbying. Absolutely illegal. I would vacate the current Houses of Parliament, convert it into private dwellings for sale, and the profits going to the taxpayer, and move them into a big warehouse somewhere in the Midlands, probably somewhere totally unglamorous. More unglamorous, the better. We want to take the glamour out of representing people. It's a job. This is a job. You need to represent people of your constituency and to work for the public good. It's not a giant boys' club. So I personally would favour somewhere that would put off the wrong people, like that's within easy access of most places in the UK. So somewhere in the Midlands, possibly Birmingham or, somewhere with easy access for transport routes. And you have accommodation blocks where they stay. There's none of this charging back expenses. They can charge a fixed rate for travel. Charge back a fixed rate for travel. They would stay in huge apartment blocks. I was quite impressed. I was lucky enough to get invited to go to. A friend of mine works for the European Southern Observatory, the astronomical organization, and he invited me to Paranal in the middle of the Atacama Desert. And when astronomers, because it's like the world's biggest telescope and etc., astronomers from all over the world go there, and they built a hotel in the middle of the desert. And it's quite, it's nice. It's not like 7-star or anything. It's, 4-star. That's all you need, right? Again, this would something like that would put off the ones who are looking to get into this for the wrong reasons. So, comfortable, well-appointed, modern accommodation that they all stay in when they're working. So they actually de facto have to network, which is fine. Nobody's saying they shouldn't talk to each other. Not in a fucking 17th century strangers bar, so not somewhere glamorous. And more to the point, the press will be banned from this building. No press. So there's no informal lobbying. In fact, the whole nature of lobbying would have to change. There would be like, I see it as being more like a kind of mixed zone, like you have after a football game, right? So you have a certain period of time, maybe daily, maybe different periods, where if people want to interface with the press, they can do, and it's in a mixed zone, but not. I mean, of course, they can always meet offside. They're not in a prison, but not officially endorsed chumminess, right? Renationalise public utilities, all of them. No foreign private ownership allowed anymore of anything associated with public utilities. So nothing that provides a service for the British people should be run for profit. And if it does generate any profit, then that should go back to the British people. It's not that complex. All arms sales to be publicly announced before licenses are issued. And I don't mean half a column inch at the bottom of the announcements in the Daily Telegraph. I mean publicly on a public website, on a government website. We should lower the retirement age back to what it was. So 60 for women, 65 for men. The WASPI women need to be compensated for the money they lost. We need to rebuild the NHS and dentistry. NHS dentistry to previous levels. There needs to be, as mentioned, a public works renewal program, not just social housing, but roads, etc., which would create an enormous amount of jobs, which would solve the unemployment crisis, of which they're not really admitting the scale of it at the moment. It's all the figures, as we know, are massaged, but even they can't, they can't deny the fact that it's getting worse and worse. Recognise and fund the arts properly. Recognise not only the conceptual value to the British public in terms of making life more bearable, but also stop with this nonsense about bloody layabouts, all this stuff. in the 1980s, for instance, the music industry was one of the biggest earners for the Exchequer worldwide. That has now been completely ripped apart for various reasons, most of which to do with streaming, to be honest. But it's historically, well, certainly since the 60s, been a massive revenue earner for the British people, and it needs to be encouraged, not to deride it as some kind of filthy bloody layabouts. You know, I don't just mean music. I mean the arts in general, theatre, not just opera, by the way, theatre, visual art, conceptual art, immersive theatre, and experimental TV and online art. All has its place in terms of enriching our lives. Where are we now? So, oh yeah, just going back to the politicians, we need to prosecute corrupt politicians in short order. And I mean fast track. So if anybody's found to be corrupt, they need to be banged up. We need to support small music venues as well. I'm a patron of the Music Venues Trust. That's something that's of great interest to me, and I think we are losing the, if you like, the musical biodiversity of our nation, which is one of our strengths. Well, cultural biodiversity. I've said windfall tax on that. Yes, hold on, nearly there. Literally design a system, a bulletproof system with proper penalties to make multinational companies pay tax. I've mentioned that, but it has to be enforced, not just talked about, because they will find, the creative accountants will find ways around things. They need to be prosecuted on the basis of evasion, not, oh, aren't you clever? You've managed to find a way around it. Okay, well, you only have to pay us 10% of what you would pay if you're a private individual. That's got to stop. So, and also for individuals, ban special tax arrangements. So none of this chummy, oh, I'll take you out for dinner to the Rules restaurant in London and we'll talk about it, or my lawyers will talk to you about it. No, the rules have to be the same for everyone. Working people, rich people, they have to adhere to the rules. I personally would have a super tax, as there was in the 60s. And I think the taxation bans need to take into account a huge amount of unearned profit on properties, particularly ones that are unoccupied. So we need to address homelessness. It is very important. And in fact, as was mentioned in Corbyn's manifesto, if there was the political will, we could end homelessness tomorrow. And we all know, I think, how that could be done. I mean, people need to be. I mean, I'm very proud of my daughter. She works for an organisation that helps get people off the streets. So I know a lot about this. There needs to be a nationwide effort to make it just not a thing anymore. So increased number of hostels, help the addicts, etc., and real finances put into that. Remove charitable status for private schools. If it was down to me, there wouldn't be any private schools, but for the life of me, I can't understand that. What moral justification there is for that? They're not charities. They've never been charities. this is a really important thing. Divest ownership and control of national media companies. I think it's absolutely crucial. In fact, I'd say that's in the top 3 for me. And we have to have a proper. I mean, you know, there's so many, you know, fucking Ofcom and all that nonsense. You know, they're not. I mean, it goes beyond toothless. They are deliberately either obfuscating or ignoring the blatant bias and corruption that's endemic now in British media. So that and then in addition to that, there needs to be an enforceable fit and proper ownership test for media media companies. Nobody's denying that they're they're private companies and there's a certain amount of latitude, but there has to be enforceable balance. So that we just cannot allow. And I would say the same if all the media were owned by left-wing interests, by the way. It's not to do with, ooh, bloody lefty, I just think it's incredibly unhealthy not to have a widespread of opinions which reflect the views of the general public. And that's where we're at the moment. There is no or very little representation of left-wing thought in the media. You only have to look at how it's manipulated on the BBC and the main terrestrial channels and Sky, where the Green Party are just not getting any platform, really. Even though they're standing, correct me if I'm wrong, but over 400 candidates. Care homes should be free and paid for by the government. I'm sure I've forgotten a load of stuff, but I think that's enough for now.
And that's amazing. Thank you. My head's been spinning as you've been saying it because I wasn't sure whether to go back and just talk about selective things that you've identified, or whether to maybe identify things that you haven't identified.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
Please
I think
fill in
that's
the gap because this is not exhaustive at all.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. I think we'll do the latter because I think what it would be great to do is to use this as a catalyst to invite other people to do theirs, not
That's a good idea.
just leading up to, excuse me, not just leading up to this election, but I think in a real democracy, it doesn't matter about elections really. It really matters that everybody can embrace some sort of participation. So going forward post the election as well, it's important for people to really consider what do they actually want. So that's amazing. So as I say, maybe I will come back to some because some sort of did get the light bulb really going. One thing I think is sort of a glaring omission is climate change.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And so,
I mean, to be honest, I kind of take that as a kind of given that we need to address that. The problem with climate change is we can do a certain amount as a country. To be honest, I don't fundamentally believe in countries anymore. I don't think they're particularly relevant. And that's more of a global challenge, but it needs to be addressed on a local level as well. If you want to get me started on that, I can do another 20 minutes. I mean, I've been involved with various climate change forums and discussions. I'm doing various projects associated with climate change as well. So maybe all I can say is it's the most important issue. It trumps everything here.
Yes.
Everything. Okay.
I was just going to say, sorry, and I think it links very closely as well to your discussion about the media, because there are far too many people out there who simply just don't understand what climate change is. They link it directly to the weather. They don't actually understand the science behind climate change. And unfortunately, too many in the media are happy for that to continue. So basically, you have people who are reproducing and pumping out ignorance, and people were then responding to the ignorance and not responding to the clear facts.
Yeah.
And in the terms of your excuse me, in terms of your discussion of the media more specifically, I wholly believe that the media should only be allowed to produce facts. And if it wants to have opinion pieces, absolutely, but it has to be opinions on facts. And I think we need to punish any media outlet by basically having an independent organization that if they find against you, they can ask you, one, to put the apology as a front page piece if it's in paper, or on the front heading of their front of their art of their site if it's online. And then repeated punishments mean bans. So you're banned from publishing in any form for 7 days, a month, a
I like
year.
this
And at
idea.
some point, they can basically take away your license and say, we will send you to prison if you continue. Because I think the media is one of the most toxic
Totally.
ingredients within our society. There are so many people walking around in their imaginations with ideas that are simply made up or simply non-fact based.
Yeah. The problem is how you police that on the internet, because, as you know, it's like this is where national borders cease to work, really, in terms
I,
of.
I think that works there by, if you want to be a credible news organization, you will have some sort of motif attached to you and you have to apply through it and get a license.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, Pandora's box is open. You can't stop people looking at American media or Chinese media, or so.
No,
Who's going to police
no,
that?
you can't have that, but it won't have the validity and the authenticity of almost like a kite mark. So if
Yeah,
people want
but
to believe what they're going to believe it anyway. You know, people have been doing that
yeah,
since humanity began.
I think
So
people don't care. I think I love the theory of what you're saying. I just think in reality, firstly, the newspapers, TV stations, whatever, simply don't give a flying fuck about any of it. They don't care if they're found out. They just want to manipulate reality according to their paymasters, whatever. Unless they
but
were getting put in, literally, people start getting put in prison, nothing's going to change.
no, but I think if the punishments are actually there, they actually have their licenses taken away,
Well,
they will
I
think,
like the idea in theory, but I
yeah,
think it'd be very hard to put it into practice.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're in the independent media, obviously, so we do things differently. We're very much a bottom up. We're very much an egalitarian process. We're very
Yeah,
much trying to counter the lies and the rubbish that come out of the corporate legacy media. And we know from ourselves that getting money and funding is so difficult because we're not playing their game, and it's
yeah,
their game where all the money comes from.
that's right.
So we
Yeah.
struggle to survive. They are able to adapt because they have all these billions and billionaires behind them. Um, they will outlive us, and so will the lies. So unless we do something really radical, the future is very depressing.
No,
Just,
no, we're not talking about depression now.
no,
Remember?
no, it's not. But we need to find the solutions to avoid that.
No, no, and that's why this is all about positive
Absolutely,
change.
yes. When you're talking about the your support for the arts, what's the situation with the lead mill at the moment?
Oh, the lead mill, well, it's a privately owned entity. So the people who are trying to keep hold of it and using the idea of, like, we are the custodians of this and blah blah blah. There's certain truth in it, but it also, it's a more complex issue than it appears,
Yes, of
because the
course.
people who are buying it um, uh, might want to change the name of it, or I think the management company own the rights to the name. But what they want to modernize it, it needs modernizing. It really does. So I don't have any problem with that. And if it still maintains its kind of independent nature under different ownership, I don't think that matters at all. So I'm really, hate to say it, it's not normally my stance, but I'm a bit on the fence about it.
Because I think the lead mill, just using it as an example, I think it's a classic case going back to how you were you talk about ownership and how we really need to thrust cooperatives much more to the centre,
Yeah.
so that the community engages in owning and managing and making sure it's sustainable, as opposed to individuals who just seek to make money out of it and then go away and leave it to, like the hacienda, to rot.
Well, the interesting thing is Sheffield's kind of always been a place where that has been at the forefront of thought. You know, I mean, it was one of the. I might be wrong in this, but I think I'm right in saying that Red Tape was, which was the first council-run, council-financed recording studio in Britain, and they kept the prices really low, so musicians could have. Nowadays, of course, everybody's got a laptop they can record on, but in those days, it was very important, and it's still going.
Yeah.
So things like that, very simple, kind of art-oriented, publicly minded places, institutions are really critical everywhere. Small
Yes.
towns, big towns, villages, you name it. It doesn't make any difference.
Yes. No, absolutely. I mean, we live in Dorset. You can imagine how we feel in terms of the number of art outlets there are. I mean, there are obviously arts outlets, but times that over the years that we thought, oh, if only we lived close to London, if only we could just go in and spend a day visiting this gallery and this museum and that sort of stuff and come away feeling really refreshed. But now, of course, it's so expensive on the trains, Martyn, that it's that in itself as well, the public transport, which you were talking about earlier as well, is a real inhibitor for so many people who live away from conurbations.
Totally agree.
In terms of I love the idea of no lobbying, or at least all lobbying has to be open, so
Yes.
that we as the public can see exactly what they say, and we can judge it, and we can be part of the decision-making processes. In terms of prosecuting people who are corrupt, absolutely, and I totally agree with the fast track system. Interesting as well, I think one of the main issues that we have in this country is the way in which we allow alcohol and drugs now to almost be the oppressor. We've got to a stage, I think, where the division that exists within society isn't managed at the top. In fact, it's created a lot by the top because they want that division. But what they've also allowed, I think, over the last half a century plus, is for the use of alcohol and drugs to be the thing that we go to. So we don't emancipate ourselves.
Brave new world, isn't it? It's Soma.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. So I think we probably need a policy on that, as opposed to just responding to addictions. We need to look at why so many people are turning to, cannabis, for example, used to be something that people would stop you in the street, policeman would stop you in the street, or police officer, sorry, take it off you, arrest you, maybe even charge you. Now it doesn't matter where you walk, you smell cannabis as people walk past, even if they're openly doing it. I'm not saying that's a problem. I'm saying the issue is why they're doing it.
Yeah.
Because they're not happy with themselves. And the same with alcohol.
Funnily enough, I was just discussing this not more than 20 minutes ago with a friend of mine. I just come back from New York, and now, of course, cannabis is legal in New York State now. I was staying in Hell's Kitchen near 8th Avenue, and went for a walk down 8th Avenue. Lovely multicultural place. Every third shop was a head shop. There was, I mean, just, I would say, half of the people on the streets were smashed. And this is because they're trying to escape something. It's not for recreational purposes. So conceptually, everything has to be. It's another thing I really strongly believe in. Mental health provision is appalling. Particularly post-COVID, there's a lot of mental health issues in the country, and there's just hardly. You try and get an NHS therapist, you've got a 9-month waiting list. So you end up going to these privatized online things, which is like 50 quid a pop. Do you know
Absolutely.
what I mean? It's just
Yes,
obscene.
I
This
totally.
is about to run out, by the way, isn't it? Are you going to extend it?
We've got another 2 minutes before we're going to shut down. Don't worry. Yeah, I'm with you absolutely on that, Martin. It is horrendous. Even in rural locations like this, there is such a massive issue, um, especially for young people, but not just for young people, but as I say, young people specifically because of the impact of COVID and the fact that we have a non-caring government.
Yeah,
We have basically people who either deny it or lie about it.
yeah,
So until you have that, compassionate party like you're talking about, um, those things are simply not going to change because they don't care, because they can afford to go private, they can afford to look after their kids, or they come from that cultural background where you go to public school and you do it and you put up with it and stop behaving like a pansy. Do you know what I mean? You're being prepared for the top of the hierarchy, so get on with it. And it
yeah,
just seems, and it's pitiful.
yeah.
So one thing we'll finish off on, I think, which is probably slightly controversial just for the last 30, 45 seconds, is we talk about this huge social housing program revolution, which
Yeah.
probably needs to be about renovation of existing stock as opposed to building a lot more new stock, because that in a way contradicts the climate change and the environmental issues as well. But I guess one thing that I'd like people who are watching this today take away, and forget all the right-wing bullshit from Reform UK and the Tories and all that, and Rwanda and all that, but the nature of population, because I do think we need to consider the fact that as human beings, if we want a long-term sustainable planet, we have to behave in such a way that future generations will have something worth living. And I don't
Completely
think at the
agree.
moment we're too busy living for now, and we're not spending enough time
Couldn't agree
creating.
more. Yeah.
So I think that's
I think it's really important that we acknowledge the really I mean the big issues are the global issues, and we're all going to be fucked anyway, if we don't really change things now. So
yeah.
we need to fight in a lobbying sense on an international scale, not just on a national scale.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Martin. Can I just say to everybody watching, please feel free to send in your own manifestos. This has got to be a
Yes,
catalyst for change. It's not just about us talking, yapping, it's about everybody participating. Thank you so much, Martin.
thank you. I'll send you this list.
Brilliant. Thank you.